Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 6 of our reading of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let me check something really quick here. Looks like this will go live on April 16th. April 16th, okay. Anyways, this is a book it is a novelization rather, by Richie Tankersley Cusick, based on the screenplay by Joss Whedon. Now, as always, we're going to go over the copyright information. That's always a must. This is not my content. This is somebody else's. And I want to give them full credit. It says, copyright 1992 by 20th Century Fox Film. Copyright all rights reserved. It says here, all rights reserved, including the right to reproduce this book or portions thereof in any form whatsoever. So, I guess that this is what we're... Okay. It's been a while since probably about a week since I recorded one of these, so I don't exactly remember what happened last time. I believe that it was, Buffy met Lothos, but Pike rescued her, and, maybe it was the one before where, Amberlin got his arm ripped off. I don't remember. Anyway, Pike intervened and saved Buffy's life, and, Merrick sacrificed his life to save Buffy. He didn't want to get turned into a vampire and reveal Buffy's identity or any of his secrets or anything, so he ended up committing suicide. So, we are going to, I believe that we had just started this chapter, actually. So, let's pick this up. Chapter 28. Buffy propped herself against the kitchen sink, vacantly rinsing a glass. She stared down at it, watching the mechanical movements of her hands, seeing nothing at all. She hardly even noticed when her mother breezed through the kitchen door. "Dinner's in the fridge. Stay away from the jag. We'll be back by 12. Buffy's mother stopped. She looked at her daughter curiously. "Buffy, honey." "Yeah?" And suddenly, more than anything, Buffy wanted to talk. Wanted to tell her mother the whole horrible, unbelievable truth. She looked up hopefully and saw her mother's concerned frown. "Have you gained a few pounds?" Her mother narrowed her eyes. Maybe it's that outfit. Maybe." Buffy turned back to the sink. "What's Bobby gonna say?" "I don't know, Mom. I've never met Bobby." Buffy's mom laughed. Aren't we the chatty one?" Kiss noise. She hurried out the door. Buffy looked down at her clothes and at herself, and came to a firm decision. The last person Buffy expected to see that night was Pike. As she made her way through the crowded mall, his tall, lean frame suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and he hurried to catch up. "Buffy, hey, I've been looking all over for you." Buffy kept walking. Pike amiably kept pace beside her. "I've been working on some stuff for you. What you doing?" "I'm going shopping," Buffy said brusquely. "Don't try to stop me." You never want to stop a woman from shopping, that's for sure. Might lose an arm. "Cool," Pike nodded. I could actually use a couple of Allen wrenches. So what do you need?" "A dress." "Dress, huh? What for?" "For the dance." "Come again?" "I'm going to the senior dance." Pike pretended to play charades. Second word sounds like dance. Buffy stopped right next to a photo booth. "I'm going to the dance." "What for?" "In order to dance, and to drink punch, and be with my friends." "Comprende?" "I still don't believe this." Pike looked mildly amazed. "The world's under attack by the legions of the undead, and you're going to a mixer." "It's not a mixer," Buffy bristled. "It's the senior dance, and it's important. You wouldn't understand." "You got that right. I thought you wanted to kill vampires." "I don't want to kill anybody, and I don't want to talk about it anymore." "Listen," Pike said seriously, "it stinks what happened to Merrick." "I know that," Buffy shrugged. "He did what he was supposed to." Her tone was offhand, almost disdainful. "But Buffy, you're the guy, the chosen guy." "Right," Buffy retorted. "I'm the chosen one, and I choose to be shopping." "I should have known." Buffy raised her fist, and Pike started back involuntarily. "Leave me alone," Buffy said. "Benny was right." Pike stared at her. "You guys are all exactly the same." Buffy turned on her heel and walked away. Ooh, a heel turn. But she could still hear Pike calling after her. "I'm not disappointed, I'm just angry." As Buffy disappeared among the shoppers, Pike headed off in the other direction. He didn't look back at the photo booth. If he had, he would have seen Benny emerging from the curtains, gazing after them with incredulous glee. Buffy? Benny repeated to himself. Buffy? He moved off quickly into the crowd. 1 second after he left, a strip of photos dropped out of the slot. There was no one in them, because vampires cannot be seen on camera. That's correct. Chapter 29. Wow, these are short chapters. Look at this. In the boiler room beneath Hemmerly High, the vampires had gathered. Lotho stood with Benny, who was positively beaming at his latest accomplishment. Astonishing. For one so fresh, Lotho said admiringly. And you know where she lives? Benny shook his head. No, master, but I know what she's doing Saturday night. Lothos let his eyes sweep slowly across the shadows, over all the hideous faces waiting there. He smiled and put his arm around Benny. It's good to be dead. Chapter 30. It took Buffy a long time to find just the right dress. All the outfits she would normally have gone crazy over now seemed uncomfortably light, and even bizarre for her newly acquired fashion taste. She spent most of Saturday looking. When she finally decided on the perfect one, she took it home and laid it out on her bed. She stuffed her blood-stained clothes into a duffel bag along with some steaks. Then she tossed the bag into the back of her closet and started getting ready for the dance. The party was already underway when Buffy got to the gym. Streamers fluttered everywhere, and tables had been set up along the windows. As couples danced, a DJ spun tunes and kept up a stream of senseless chatter. There was a setup in one corner for taking pictures. Kids who were all used to seeing each other every day looked conspicuously different tonight, very elegant and hip, dressed in every imaginable shade of black. Nicole and Kimberly both wearing slinky little black dresses while standing by the punch bowl and talking. As Buffy entered the gym in her long white strapless gown, she suddenly felt too conservative for the crowd, almost as if she had gone too far trying to be normal. She clutched her matching purse and walked in hesitantly, looking around for Jeffrey, but saw Andy instead. Buffy, he greeted her. Looking tasty. Thanks. Have you seen Jeffrey? But Andy had moved on. Buffy worked her way. I think I know where this is going. Sorry, lost my place. Buffy worked her way slowly through the crowd and over to the punch bowl. Nicole and Kimberly abruptly stopped whispering. Hey, hi guys, Buffy smiled. Hi. Have you guys seen Jeffrey? The limo never showed. I thought he might be here. Nicole and Kimberly gave each one a significant look. I haven't seen him tonight, Nicole said. Oh, Buffy picked up a glass of punch and went on pleasantly. I'm glad you guys are here. It's good to see you. Kimberly's voice dripped sarcastically. Yeah, whoops. I came. Buffy paused and tried again. You look way pretty, Kim. I know. I like your little outfit. It's amazing what you can do with a parachute and some starch, Nicole added. As long as there's room for 3 in it, Kimberly kept it up. Why didn't you just bring your new friends? Buffy stared at them, startled by their attack. Nicole giggled. I guess you guys are mad at me, Buffy admitted. I'm sorry. I've been really. Jeffrey suddenly appeared between them with Jennifer on his arm. Jeffrey, Buffy brightened. There you are. Her words choked in her throat. She could see everyone staring at her, at Jeffrey, at Jennifer. Assessing the situation, she could feel the expression on her own face. The shock. The betrayal, maybe? Slowly fading to deep hurt. Jeffrey looked uncomfortable. Jennifer was practically apoplectic, but with embarrassment. Buffy could hear Kimberly giggling uncontrollably beside her while Nicole was able to manage a bit more restraint. Buffy, Jeffrey finally spoke up. What are you doing here? I thought we were meeting here, Buffy said lamely. I'm here with Jenny. As Buffy glanced over at her friend, Jennifer seemed to be hyperventilating, tugging at Jeffrey's arm like a dog on a leash. I don't understand, Buffy mumbled. Oh, come on, Buffy, you know what's going on, Jeffrey said defensively. It's not working out at all. I've got to move on. I mean, I've got needs too. I told you about all this. No, you didn't. When? Didn't you get my message? You broke up with my machine? You weren't home. Jeffrey's tone was self-righteous now. Like always. You left me a message? I'm out of here, Jenny. At the mention of her name, Jennifer jumped, and in her haste to get away, she bumped Buffy's arm, spilling bright red punch down the other girl's chest. Horrified, Jennifer fled with Jeffrey in tow. As they left the gym, Kimberly found the whole predicament funnier than ever, but Nicole was silent. Buffy turned to the wall as a soft ballad came over the speakers. Tears filled her eyes, and she wiped furtively at her dress. After a long time, she gathered herself together and looked after Jeffrey and Jennifer toward the door. Pike was there. He was walking in alone, wearing a leather jacket and baggy old tuxedo pants, accentuated with chains, and carrying an unlaced sneaker. Sorry. He was walking in alone, wearing a leather jacket and baggy old tuxedo pants, accentuated with chains, an earring, and unlaced sneakers. He looked great. As Pike cut through the crowd, he walked directly towards Buffy. She could see a few heads turning, following his progress across the floor. I crashed your party, Pike looked down at her. Pretty shallow of you. That's me. I'm glad you came. Yeah, you look like you're having a swell time. Noticing the stain on Buffy's dress, Pike picked up a glass of punch and looked around the room and without hesitation dumped the punch down the front of his shirt. Buffy smiled at him. Well, will I get my head knocked off if I ask you to dance, Pike asked. Buffy shook her head. I don't actually think Jeffrey's going to notice. Pike took her into his arms and began to lead slowly, not too close. Yeah, well, you're the one I'm afraid of, Pike teased. They danced for a while without speaking, their bodies moving closer and closer. You know, Pike finally said, you're not like the other girls. Buffy pulled him nearer. She held him gently, her whisper almost weak in his ear. Yes, I am. All around them, couples danced and kissed. Gary Murray stood along the wall and kept watch. At a table beside the window, Kimberly sat with her bovine date and watched Buffy disdainfully. I can't believe it, she muttered. Without warning, the window shattered by her head, and Kimberly screamed and jumped back. A vampire's hand clawed through the broken glass and reached for her. Chapter 31. Other windows broke and shattered as glass sprayed around the gym. More and more vampires appeared outside surrounding the dancers, and grinning hungrily, a couple of students ran for the inner door, but it was locked tight from the other side. A confused awareness was rippling through the crowd now, as everyone slowly became aware that something strange was happening. The noise and music faded and died, and kids began herding vaguely and fearfully into the middle of the room. Buffy and Pike looked around, assessing the situation. A student staggered in through the outer door, screaming and holding his neck. They're out there. They're vampires. Somebody help me. He fell to the ground a few feet inside the doorway. For one horrible second, nobody moved. Then one of the students started toward the body. Don't go near the door, Buffy warned him. Instead, Buffy ran over and checked the corpse, then lifted her head, listening as a number of heavy footsteps began to lurch through the mist toward the gym. Buffy stepped back as 3 teenage vampires lumbered up to the door. It's party time, the first one declared, licking his lips. Don't worry, Buffy called back to the crowd. They can't come in. They can't come in unless they're invited. I already invited them, Kimberly said. Every face in the room turned to look at her. As Kimberly met their accusing stares, she drew herself up defensively. They're seniors. Pike reached into an inner pocket and pulled out a handful of small stakes he'd made. He gave them to Buffy, and she opened her purse. Inside, amid all the cosmetics, hairspray, keys, gum, water bottle, and pens, lay Merrick's wooden cross. Buffy shifted everything inside and fitted the stakes in, thinking out loud. First thing we should... Buffy, the first vampire drooled. You want to dance? Looks like you're busted, Pike said to her. The second vampire crowded the door, his eyes gleaming. We want her. We want Buffy. Send her out. Or we come in, the first vampire promised. They faded back, almost disappearing. Pike looked out the window where more vampires were gathering around the gym. All right, everyone, stay calm. Gary Murray held up his hands for quiet and focused his attention on Buffy. What's going on? Looks bad, Buffy, Pike said, matter-of-factly. One of the senior girls spoke up. Send her out. What? Buffy stared at her. They'll kill us, Kimberly agreed. She's the one they're mad at. Yeah, one of the boys echoed. Send her out. Everyone be quiet, Gary Murray tried to keep order. What are you kidding? They'll kill her, Andy burst out, appalled. They'll kill us, Kimberly reminded him. Pike moved towards Kimberly with his fist raised. You want some punch? I got detention slips here, Gary Murray waved them in the air. I'm not afraid to use them. But the other students had picked up the cry now, clamoring to sacrifice Buffy. Pike crossed over to his bag, which he'd left beside the door, as two boys moved towards Buffy. Andy quickly intervened. Pike stepped in front of her, holding his custom-made cartridge-loaded crossbow, and trained it on the crowd, Then he stood there calmly and waited until the room quieted down. There's got to be a back way out of here or something, Pike suggested. Buffy gazed around the room. She saw a happy celebration that had suddenly turned deadly. She saw the partygoers, her friends, staring back at her, angry and scared. She looked out the door, then back again at her friends. I'm going out the front, she said. Are you nuts, Buffy? Even Pike was staring at her now. There's dozens of them out there. They'll rip us apart. Buffy shook her head. You're staying here, she said. She saw the look on his face, but before he could speak, she rushed on. Some of them might not come after me. If they don't, this place is going to turn into a total stain. Pike coolly regarded the crowd. You say that like it's a bad thing. Buffy, this is crazy, Andy argued. What do these guys want? Andy started breaking up some chairs. Oh, Andy, start breaking up some chairs. You'll need weapons. Buffy held her ground and stared back at him, relieved when he obediently moved off. She went to Pike's bag and started pulling out stakes. Good thing one of us was prepared. But Pike wasn't listening. Buffy, there's no way you're going out there alone. Buffy stood up. Before Pike could say another word, she kissed him hard on the lips. Don't make me mad. And as Pike watched speechlessly, she knelt down and began to rip the hem of her dress. Okay. Chapter 32. Outside, a mist had risen around the gym, swirling about the feet of the undead who stood clustered near the door. They looked to be about 20 of them now. Some of them some with keen, eager expressions, other vacant and half-conscious with bloodlust. They watched and they waited. Buffy appeared in the doorway, and the vampire saw her walk slowly out into the open. Her torn dress came to just above her knees, and she wore Pike's leather jacket over it. Her purse was strapped across her chest under the jacket. In one hand, she held Pike's crossbow. In the other hand was a cross. As she stepped farther away from the door, the vampires began to close around her. She heard the door shut at her back. The vampires came closer, still closer. They began to circle her while she stood there and tried to anticipate their next move. She waited until they were about 8 feet away, and then she whipped out a bottle of Perrier and sprayed it all around herself, searing the first line of vampires. Screaming, they clutched their faces. In an astounding blur of gymnastics and martial arts, Buffy held her own, leaping through... Check something real quick. Okay, that's good. Sorry, let me read this paragraph again. My phone was being really weird. In an astounding blur of gymnastics and martial arts, Buffy held her own, leaping, throwing kicks and punches, and driving an occasional stake expertly into its target. She managed to scatter the vampires just long enough to make a run for it. From the windows of the gym, everyone watched as the vampires followed Buffy. It's okay, Kimberly called out excitedly. I think they're going after her. As if it had hurt her, one of the vampires turned back towards the gym, its mouth fixed in a huge grin. Behind it, at least half the other vampires turned and started back eagerly for the easy pickings inside. Pike stared at Kimberly. I'll bet you feel stupid. Let's get away from those windows, Gary Murray ordered. Find something to cover them with. Immediately the students started moving, grabbing whatever they could find. Bring over the table, Pike said, and Nicole glanced anxiously around the room. There's nails and other stuff we used to put everything up, she told him. Get 'em. Andy and some others dragged a table across the floor. Pike helped them hoist it up against the window. He looked out one last time through the glass and covered it up. Buffy was racing across the campus now, the undead close at her heels. Running as fast as she could to a nearby cluster of school buildings, she passed a line of parked cars and recognized Jeffrey's BMW. On one end, she sped by it, but even as she did so, she could hear the voices through the window. You and Jennifer deserve each other, she said dryly. Oops. Glancing again, she saw the vampires closer than ever, and she took off with the horde right behind her. In the gym, disaster struck quickly as, to everyone's horror, windows began to explode, the boards over them splintered and smashed inward. At one window, a student frantically pounded in nails but was caught and dragged out, screaming for his life. One vampire tried to crawl in, was immediately skewered by Pike. Another managed to make it through but was smashed on the head repeatedly by Andy. It staggered, smiling, then turned towards the boy. The heart, Pike yelled. Stab them in the heart. Andy shoved a table leg into the creature's chest just as it closed its fingers around his throat. Kimberly shrieked as a vampire grabbed her and started forcing her out the window. In a frenzy, Nicole ran to her, trying to wrestle the vampire's hands away. The vampire grabbed Nicole instead. Thrown off balance, she was almost over the window before Kimberly could even react. Helplessly, Kimberly began screaming for help. Andy and Pike dashed to the window, but it was too late. As Nicole was dragged out into the night, vampires swarmed over her. Behind the record player, another vampire was looking for music. He stopped, finding a record he liked, and put it on. The soft strains of Teen Angel wafted out over the butchery in the gym. Beneath fluttering party decorations, the grisly festivities seemed dreamy and surreal. Hearing the music, another vampire grabbed Kimberly and started to dance with her, ignoring her hysterical shrieks as it leaned forward to bite her neck. Pike stabbed it through from the back. For a moment, he watched the creature's death agonies, and then he turned and froze. He was face to face with Benny. Chapter 33. As Buffy approached the building nearest to the gym, she could see about 20 vampires behind her. Finding the door locked, she smashed it with her shoulder and ran inside. Several vampires started to follow her into the building, but a figure suddenly appeared before her and raised its hand, stopping them all in their tracks. The creature stared in silence and slowly began to fade back. Emmeline smiled at them. He raised his fingers to his lips. Shh. Benny slammed Pike down onto a table, lowering his ghastly face within inches of his friends. In the background, Teen Angel had been replaced by hard rock music. Isn't this great, Pike? Benny grinned. Isn't it great? Finally got those rich girls on the run. He hoisted Pike up and backhanded him across the jaw, sending Pike flying against the wall. Pike shook his head as Benny came at him again. Benny wasn't smiling anymore. Of course I'm angry, Benny raged. I leave you alone for 5 minutes, and look who you're hanging out with. He whirled around and grabbed a girl, yelling into his face. I don't want girls with good taste. I want a girl that tastes good. The girl promptly fainted. Benny dropped her and turned back to Pike, who was getting shakily to his feet, blood trickling down his forehead. I was going to change you, man. Benny glared at him. I was going to give you life. Do you know what that means? Behind them, Gary Murray was still yelling orders at students, holding a board against a window as vampires pounded on it from outside. The exposed part of the window shattered, raining glass down on his head. Buffy moved quickly along the dark hallway, then crouched near a window and peered out. Nothing. She let her eyes sweep up and down the corridor over blank doorways, steeling herself for an attack. She checked her purse. Her junk was still there, as well as Merrick's cross, but there were no stakes left. Muttering under her breath, Buffy moved swiftly into a classroom. Pike hacked away at Benny hacked away at as Benny approached him. Benny stalked slowly, ruthlessly, and as Pike went by an overturned table, he noticed the stubs of its broken leg sticking up toward the ceiling. "Never die," Benny said. "Never get kicked around. Never get busted." Benny grabbed Pike with hasteful force. His fingers dug into Pike's arm, deep and sharp enough to draw blood. "It means never having to say you're sorry. And you blow it all off with that stupid girl. What about my needs?" Without warning, Pike grabbed Benny, holding him close in a brotherly embrace. He saw Benny's surprised look of confusion. Still holding him, Pike pitched forward onto the table, driving the leg shard through Benny's back. Benny twitched and screamed in Pike's arms as he felt himself dying. Pike held him for a long time, and then let his friend go. He stood up, dazed and sad. He looked lost. A window shattered far behind him, and as the sound registered at last, Pike pulled his eyes beyond his focus and went to help. Sitting by a wall, tiny and silent amid the blood and carnage, sat Kimberly. Chapter 34. Buffy couldn't hear a sound. Still moving cautiously, she headed for the window of the classroom and lowered the shade. She crouched behind the teacher's desk and pulled a chair down next to her, laying it on its side. She slammed her elbow down on the chair leg. It was a very controlled and efficient moment, and the chair and the leg snapped right off. She looked about her more to make certain that no one had heard her, and then she picked up her new weapon. She went cautiously to the door and peered out. Right beside her, Emmeline's face materialized out of the shadows, his gleaming eyes following the direction of her stare. "All clear," Emmeline whispered. Buffy screamed and spun around. She felt a sick jolt as Emmeline hit her and sent her flying back into the classroom. The stake sailed out of her hand and landed on a desk by the window. We're going to stop this here right now, I believe. The next paragraph is kind of long. Anyways, we have been reading from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a novelization of the film by Richie Tankersley Cusick. If you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.